another episode of Dirty Laundry. It's Joey Clifton.
And meatiest of the meats, meatball.
Meatiest of the meat. What did you say?
Meatiest of the meats.
Meatiest of the meats, meatball. Well, happy Thanksgiving, meatball.
Happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
It's Thanksgiving Eve, and hopefully you're sitting around your dining room table listening to this episode.
With the family from out of town.
Yeah. Here we are broadcasting live atop the Silver City Ballroom in downtown Meriden, which coming up, well, a couple things. Our sponsor for this podcast is a little bit further away. We went to New Haven.
Right off the train.
No, right off of the Merritt or the Wilbur Cross, whatever you want to call it. Right off of 15, just past the tunnel, like near Woodbridge, is Carmine's de Vega Restaurante and Bar. And we got invited there a couple nights ago. Miguel and Louis are the owners. They just took it over from two Italian guys who had it for 30 years. And they just have an incredible Italian restaurant. Every Friday they have Mr. Don, the voice of Carmine, singing Frank Sinatra.
Really?
And I offered to have our mayor go there, Kevin, and sing. But they were like, no, we have Mr. Don, so everything's cool. We don't need anybody else.
They should have the sing-offs.
But you got to see, they really make you feel like family there. It's a different type of, it's the combination of really good Italian food and really good family company. And they really do make you feel like family. The owners come out. The one owner, Miguel, is the head chef, and he comes out and talks to you. And Crunchy is the waiter. You got to ask for Crunchy when you go.
Crunchy the waiter.
Crunchy the waiter. You will not be disappointed. He's been married 5 times. He's got 14 kids. He's got stories. Stories you cannot believe.
I bet.
So Carmine's de Vega Restaurante and Bar, New Haven, right off of the Merritt Parkway. You got to go check them out. Okay, and if you want to be a sponsor, dirtylaundryct@gmail.com. Whole bunch of things going on. It's Thanksgiving, Christmas coming right around the corner, the Festival of Lights at Hubbard Park. They were turned on last night, and I heard the Parks and Rec Department did crazy good this year. And big kudos to Kathy Matula.
Why did you hang him up?
Well, I met her, and she's Parks and Rec, and she's really good with, what do you call it? Organizing and stuff. And she's very creative.
Good.
So that's my thing.
We need creative people.
Yes, we do. Yule Fest is this Saturday, November 30th, from 2 to 6, right here on Colony Street in downtown Meriden. They're going to close off the street. Food trucks, Santa Claus comes in on the train. They're going to do a whole downtown lighting at 4:30, including the ballroom will be lit up. We got that big Happy Holiday sign all the way on the top of the building that the Yule Fest brought us.
It's going to be lit.
So, yes, it's going to be lit.
What's a Yule?
Yule is a log, isn't it? No?
I don't know.
No.
So it's a log fest?
I know the Yule log. No, it's not a log
fest.
fest. But I know the Yule log used to be on Channel 9 in New York 24 hours a day.
A Yule log was a DJ?
No, it was just on the TV. All right, forget it. The Castle Craig players, singers are going to be singing Christmas music at the ballroom. Inner Groove is going to be playing Taking Back Autumn. Our friends, if you heard our last podcast about racism, and Mike was our guest, he plays in Taking Back Autumn, and they're going to be playing at the ballroom. I think at 6 o'clock on Saturday.
I heard that podcast. It was pretty good.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you were there. Oh. It was good. But anyway, Yule Fest is this Saturday. From 2 to 6, we'll have extended hours at the ballroom as long as people want to come in and drink.
Come say hi.
Yep. Saturday, December 7th is the 21st annual Christmas in the Village in South Meriden from 1 to 4:30. You can get updates on that on Facebook at Christmas in the Village South Meriden. Have you ever gone to that?
No.
You never went to it?
No.
Sue always goes to it. And
I was never invited.
And Kathy is always there, and they say Santa's in the sleigh, and, it's supposed to be a really fun time. I've never gone. I am definitely going this year.
I just feel if I go there, people will be pointing at me and be like, "Hey, here's somebody from another side of the town. Let's chase them away."
Why you think they keep everything separate in South Meriden from the rest of Meriden?
Seems like it.
You think so?
Seems like it.
Well, we should build a bridge from downtown to South Meriden and bring us all together.
Yeah, we should. 'Tis the season.
Well, we have a very special guest this week.
Who is it?
National MMA fighter, martial arts expert, 5-time black belt in jiu-jitsu, and Area 1 councilman, downtown Meriden, Miguel Castro.
Woo!
And I have your theme music, Miguel. We like to call him Ninjalito.
That's his fame.
Yeah.
Hello, Joe.
Do you like your theme music?
I do. It was very creative.
Good. Yeah.
Good job.
I thought of it all myself.
You wrote the song?
So how many years have you been a black belt? No?
That is the million-dollar question. And as you may know, things really change from people to people when they're trying to really create a perception about something that never happened to justify.
I thought there was a video of you in the MMA octagon. No? Because I heard you're really good with karate chops and everything else.
Based on the statement provided to a law enforcement officer, that is pretty much what it was rendered. But the question is that once we got to the opportunity to litigate the case, we were able to really prove otherwise.
All right. Well, I'm going to get back to your karate chops in just a couple minutes.
I appreciate that.
Because you're definitely in the news because of the lawsuit. They dropped it. We're going to get to all of that. But I got a couple of burning questions I want to ask you just about in Meriden in general, being a councilman. You're one of the few councilmen that I see pretty much on a daily basis downtown. And I know that you do a lot for local businesses. You're one of the faces of Meriden because we always see you. And you're always like, if you need anything, make sure you let us know. One of the really good things that you just did was La Poblanita was the local restaurant right across the street from the ballroom. Your construction company redid the next door. She opened up the wall, and I heard she's doing excellent now that she's got a dining room.
Well, Joe, you see, the economic development opportunity in our city has been striving for many years since the flood control mechanism implemented have really come to fruition. We have $130 million in private development money that is at the table because of the flood control advancement that we have been able to really accomplish. But it's not a one-person accomplishment. This has been an effort for 25 years for a number of...
You've got different economic developers through the years. You've got different city managers through the years. So everybody was kind of on board from the start. And whenever somebody gets replaced, the new person just kind of picks up where they left off.
You see, the conversation started 25 years ago where the conversation identified a number of issues in downtown. Downtown flooded. And in 92 and in 94, there were over $24 million worth of commercial damages in businesses in downtown,
and everybody moved out.
And the perception that was established and created that no one wanted to come into downtown and invest their dollars and be a part of our rebranding. Mm-hmm. So the conversation took a direction to first target the issue, resolve the problem. And there's a number of brilliant minds that were at the table. I had the opportunity to sit in the Flood Control Implementation Agency, my first term on the council, where there were, Phil Ashton, Michael Rohdes of the world, Dwight Needles, and a number of other members of this implementation agency that located a number of issues and how to really identify the problems and to partner with not only local, state, and federal partners, and how to identify dollars and funding so we can then bring this project to fruition, which is what we have today.
Right, and that's the Meriden Green that everybody complains about, but at the same time, they all love it. They use it. The concert series on Fridays, the farmers market. Now the biggest thing is the new building that they're going to build on the green. And, we've told everybody a million times, like, it was always in the plan to put it there. The problem is, what I think they should have done was, if they would have done the Meriden Green and left that corner dirt with a fence around it, would have looked like crap for the last 3 years. But nobody would have complained that a building was going there because they would have seen that there was always going to be something there. The problem is, they made it look nice for everybody. They put grass on that corner. Now when they want to build the building there, everybody's like, no, but it's flood control. How could you put a building on the green? And it's like, well, first of all, look at it. They made it for a building. It's much higher than the rest of the green is. They're not going to go and put a building somewhere where it's going to flood. They don't want to go backwards. They're moving forward. But I really think it's because people are used to using that area of the green to throw frisbee and tennis and all of that stuff. And now they look at it and say, wow, they're going to put a building on the green? But it was always supposed to be there.
In some of the original conversations in regards of the commitments that the city have made with some of the developers that have really come to the table to be part of this tremendous city's drive and rebranding, to change the course of the conversation and to embrace the possibility of economic development, real economic development and real economic growth, has always been part of the conversation. Now, although that we have been now at the tail end of whether this is going to be the finishing touches of this beautiful green, this flood control mechanism that we have just put together. It's just ready to go into that next conversation to whether this is going to be vented properly, it's going to be discussed properly, it's going to be in a public setting, in a transparent way. And we have just passed at the council level where we are going to give the developer, Penrose, an extension where they're going to come back and they're going to look at some of the thoughts and concerns that we have really brought to their attention.
Which I saw. They were talking about downsizing it, making it a little bit skinnier, a little bit less apartments to kind of lessen the impact.
And originally
of a
it was, out of the 14 acres in the park, it was going to be 4 acres, and now it's half an acre, the 2 buildings that are going to occupied. And they have been extremely sensitive. They have paid closer attention. They have listened. They have come to the table. They can relate. They have really gone back to the drawing board. And with their staff and team, they have been able to really take on all of the thoughts and concerns that us as elected officials and our constituents have really brought to the table with regards to this last piece of the puzzle, and work with this to deliver a product that it is going to be acceptable or not to the public, and that it's going to be beneficial to the city of Meriden, which is now on the rise in all of the efforts of rebranding. We think about 14 acres of property that is a giant catch base. That everything built on that green was built with the intention to be submerged under water. That no longer water is going to travel all around the streets and going to create
common
damage.
sense is, I mean, years ago, I don't know what year it was when they built the mall there. It was like you took the brook and covered it up. All right, what do you think is going to happen
It was contained.
when you cover up a brook? What do you think is going to happen? So I think it's one of the best things Meriden's done in many years, and it's probably the essential thing that they've done is give us a town green, and it's flood control, and it's beautiful. And once all those trees grow, I mean, I can imagine what it's going to look like in 10 years from now. Once it's like wilderness, you know what I mean?
It is nationally recognized, not only because of what represents the issue that it was fixed and it was addressed, but also the opportunity to highlight the kind of partnership and brainstorming and strategic planning of the experts that were at the table during all of these years that brought to the table the kind of consideration, partnership, and strategic planning at the local, state, and federal level to allocate and point dollars and funding to make sure that this project were not only something that came to fruition, but it was also implemented long-term rather than short-term.
Yeah, but aside from the flood control, what else did those brilliant minds come along with? What else can we do to bring the economic development into the city?
Well, the perception is that nothing is really, happening in downtown.
Right.
But there is.
Like?
You go back to what Joe was referring to when La Poblanita here at right across the street from the ballroom. They started with a grocery store with a bodega, and a bodega went into and it grown into a deli. And now on Saturday and Sunday, people were out the door and waiting on the sidewalk.
And that's great, but one La Poblanita is not going to save the whole city.
It's a start, though.
And I'm about to answer that in a minute. I appreciate your interjection, but this is just one of many of the signs that the rebranding effort of the city is really working. So when you have an establishment that have grown in the last 5 years from a bodega to a grocery to a deli to expanding their dining area 900 square feet. When you have the downtown coffee shop that have just invested thousands of dollars into a hood so they can expand their menu.
Right.
When you have the Landmark a little further up the street that it's crowded on a weekend and every week, in their mornings. When you have the Jamaican spot in downtown that is as busy as he claims he is.
Yeah.
When you have Mr. Taco that have just opened up near on the other side of the park. When you have these kind of restaurants that are expanding and businesses that are doing extremely well, is an indication that what the plan and the vision and the message that's been established by all the people around the table, by the brilliant minds that have talked about when we fix the flood control issue, to kind of point out what the main problem and issue to allow room for this kind of advancement, it's happening. Economic growth and economic development doesn't happen overnight. Knowing that a conversation took 25 years to bring this major, massive project to fruition and implementing possibility that is tied to tremendous economic growth that it's happening and housing opportunity, it is indicative that the plan is working and is working long term. Now, the $1 million question is, why is it 24 Colony Street is empty?
Right.
Well, everything else is working. This is a separate plan, an issue that, unfortunately, there is some provisions on the agreement that we could not use to come back and hold this developer accountable.
Well, I think that's the perception that residents have is, okay, they don't see all the businesses that you just talked about.
Correct.
They see empty storefronts sitting there for 3 years. And if you think about it, if the green was finished, about 3 years ago?
Correct.
Okay, so 3 years ago, we had quite a few existing struggling businesses that moved out of downtown when they started seeing all the buildings popping up. So I don't know whether it was a scare thing or whatever. They got out. We had a little dry spell there about a year ago. And then I would say 2019 has really been on the rise. It's very spread out around downtown. People still see that 24 Colony empty.
And that is very obvious because it's right in the middle of downtown
Right.
and in the middle of all the efforts of this tremendous rebranding and these great positive results that the city have been able to accomplish along with all of our other partners. But outside the downtown vicinity, we have Taino on the east side. We have all the tax incentives. We have a brand new plaza where it has developed and provided opportunity for other businesses,
Right.
smaller
It's not
businesses.
just downtown.
Correct.
You've got incentives
So-
throughout Meriden.
Correct. And it's expanding and providing opportunity to a number of other business individuals with the opportunity to really come to the table and invest some of their dollars in an area that was not going to happen perhaps 15 years ago.
Right.
So what are the points that those minds came out with? One was to resolve the flooding issue. That's done great. It's helping along. What are the other points that they came out with to boost the productivity and the economic development?
The flood control is really the main subject that have tied that tremendous accomplishment to
Right.
economic development, economic growth, and housing, an
The
opportunity to allow people to not only work, but also live and shop
Right.
locally. And those ideas were part of the effort. When you talk about flood control, you
Right.
you talk about economic growth, you talk about housing opportunity, you talk about work opportunity, development,
But
and
that's yes
economic
and no.
growth.
I'll disagree with the point that if you fix the flood control, everything will come. I don't think that's going to happen.
No, but the flood control was
an
the
issue.
big elephant in the room.
Right. It was solved. And what's next?
Well, once you fix that and everything starts rolling in the right direction, I think a lot of people put it on the city to take care of a lot of these vacant buildings, and they're not putting it on the people that own these buildings.
But keep the momentum going. We just mentioned La Pablanita or Tejanos and all that stuff. All right, these things blossomed after the flood control is fixed. How do you maintain the momentum?
Well, the same exact way that we have assured and have provided that sense of economic security to local businesses where they come and offer or render a service.
Right.
And there is this kind of demand when you come on a weekend in La Poblanita, just like Mr. Tacos, like El Sol de Mexico or Flavor Point, further on the other side. And their parking lot is full of cars, and their tables are packed, and people are having either lunch or breakfast or dinner. That is indicative that what plan that they have provided so they can continue and have that kind of consistency. It's working. Our economic development department have also provided a number of resources that are also part of that economic development idea and resources that flood control.
So you're talking
plan.
about initiative, tax initiative, moving
Correct.
beyond the flood control.
Correct.
So there's tax initiative and other programs, right? Quite recently, we went to the tax assessor's office, and tax assessor wasn't even aware of any of that. Is there a breakdown of communications in the city hall?
Well, I think a big part of that is, the city went through how many people retired all at the same time.
Right.
And I don't necessarily think all of the new people that got hired were really trained properly, maybe by the people that, let's face it, if you're at a job for 30 years,
right?
Your retirement is coming up. You're just counting the days. You could care less about anything.
Right, but let me ask you this. It takes just one wrong answer for me to go to City Hall and to not open a business in Meriden.
Yeah.
I'll go somewhere else if I'm not getting
Well,
the right answer.
that is the reason why most of our mechanisms and data that is available from how the structure of information and data it is provided in our city that really work well throughout the years, especially now recently. But now you have your local elected officials.
Right.
You can reach out to any of us, anytime, anywhere. Whether it's through an email, whether it's through a text message.
Yeah, but you know what? I think a lot of people. All right, you could say that, and a lot of people know that they can do that. But for some people are lazy to get online and find a counselor who it is and get your number. But what I'm saying is, Miguel is you see him on a daily basis. He's constantly walking around. So I might not think to call my counselor. But when I see him walk by my building, it makes me think, oh, wait, you know what? Maybe I should ask him that question.
Of it. Let's say I'm from New Haven and I want to open a business in Meriden. I'm not going to be looking up counselors.
That's the Making Meriden office. Their job is to promote and look for businesses.
I'm not going to go to Making Meriden. I'm going to go to the City Hall and find out what resources are available.
And the resources are there. We have staff, and we have knowledgeable personnel and staff that will provide you the proper information.
That's Economic Development Office?
We have the Economic Development Department office that is linked and tied to a number of resources that are available, and they're there to provide the proper information to guide you and coach you in the right direction, to help you with a business plan, and to determine what are your possibilities in a 5-year plan and a 3-year plan, and the different resources that we have currently in our city that will provide and that will give you that kind of sustainability long term rather than short term. Most people think that opening a business is a challenge, and it truly is.
Yes.
But when you face and you go and find the information that we currently provide, and we coach you and we guide you, and the department is providing you the right data, most people then go back to the drawing board to determine that this is not going to be a fly-by-night business. It's going to be a business that's going to come in. These are your challenges. These are your steps. These are the things that you need to take. These are the licensing fees and the departments and the writings and the solicitations that you have to make and the applications that you have to fill. And I have seen the tremendous drive that our Economic Development Department have been able to really provide and allow local businesses, whether it's on the industrialized area, whether it's on the restaurant area, whether it's smaller or bigger or manufacturing businesses, that have been able to really make that connectivity with our staff and our people and fill the information that they are looking for. They have left our offices satisfied and quite happy that they have been able to really have their answers and questions answered.
So let's say I'm out of state. I'm looking to open something in Meriden. Where do I go? I go to the city hall. I go to
The Economic Development Department.
And then they point you to making Meriden, or they hook you up with all the right people to be able to get your business going.
All right.
But all right, staying on the whole business thing. All right, so you just explained to us like all these things that if I wanted to open up a business, these are the things that I need to have my business plan. I got to do this. I got to do that. It brings me up to a point, and I argue with everybody about this because I'm totally against it. I'm not sure your feelings on the new banquet hall at the golf course, but from a citizen perspective, it's trying to understand why the city of Meriden would be interested in being in the business of being in business, if you understand what I'm saying. And also, to open up a business, we had to do a business plan. We had to get our loan. We had to get all of these things in order and present it to economic development. But when it's the city doing it, it seems like they kind of look past that, because from the outside looking in, it looks like the city's just a certain councilman is pushing this down everybody's throat to build this banquet hall, but nobody's seen a plan. Nobody sees any type of study that they talk about, and that Meriden needs a banquet hall. So I guess, all right, that was a lot of questions. I understand that. I guess, let me know what your thoughts are on the banquet hall, and if you're for it, convince me why I should be agreeing.
Well, and I'm going to be brief with you on that, Joe.
Okay.
First of all, the city has been extremely comprehensive when it comes down to a plan and a proposal that have really come through the proper channels where it was proposed. It went to committee. Committee have debated the matter and the issue in many ways that have really allowed the public, in a public setting, in a transparent way, to understand what the actual proposal is.
Who proposed it?
The city has proposed as based on the information that some of my colleagues and peers on the city council have looked into and have presented this in a way that through the proper banquet building committee, discussing and preparing all the proper information, it is not only discussed, it is not only argued and debated properly and correctly in a transparent way, but all the pros and cons and the things that people will like, the things that business like yourself will like to see. And the reason why these meetings and these discussions and dialogues are made in a transparent way is so businesses and our constituents are part of the dialogue, that we can include the public, that there is nothing in hiding. That most of the comments that people have made that the city looked the other way and that we're above the law and that we're trying to really either push this in a way that is because he's either the pet project of a particular city councilor. That is not how I feel. I sit in the room. I have been part of the dialogue. I have been part of the conversation. I think it has been fair. I've been all the data and information when it was first proposed and it was crafted, and by way of resolution, which is the first step to bring it into to create a banquet building committee with members that are from the community, people that are at the table, bringing their own thoughts, collecting data and information. A number of things have transpired and happened that even when it came back to the council floor for discussions for all of us as elected officials, we have the opportunity to bring your thoughts, your concerns, people's complaints, people's perception, clear out some of the misinformation and clear and make sure that we're having a fair and open discussion about what is being presented that's going to be, at the end of the day, a benefit to the city. As an elected official, as a member of the Meriden City Council, my fiduciary responsibility is to make sure that anything that is discussed, that is proposed, it has to benefit both our constituents and the city. And that the vision is long-term, that is going to create a tremendous benefit rather than somebody else's project. And people talk, and people have created conversations, and people have had different powwows and side discussions and dialogues in regards of what really happened, or if people have had really conversations behind closed doors, or that the public wasn't really exposed to a certain type of information. I can assure you that being one of the members of the city council that have been, exposed to all the data, all the information, all the transparency, it has been fair, it has been clear, and the committee, both the banquet building committee and the finance committee, have answered all of the possible questions.
Right.
And although it seems and it felt like this has to be voted on and a decision has to be made right away, construction schedule, the raise of certain pricing, there's a number of elements that are part of this discussion. Number one, the original budget proposal was $800,000. And what can the banquet building committee proposed with electing a local contractor that will and can deliver a project that's going to be a complement to the golf course, and in essence is going to be a benefit to the city.
Yeah, but wait, I gotta cut you off for a second.
So before you go into that, so it evolved from that. For me, that was an issue.
Right.
I'm going to be honest with you. For me, that was an issue because it needed to go into the same procedure and the same application that we applied to the two high schools. We will hire an architect firm. The architect will deliver and will craft a plan based on all of the data that has been collected for all of these discussions and dialogues. And at the end of the day, based on that discussion and data, we'll deliver the numbers. It will deliver the kind of project that we would like, and within budget. And then the committee will make the ultimate decision, and councilors, in their own mind, listening to constituents, base their vote and their support or non-support on this kind of information. So for those who are listening, and for those who are thinking that this has been push, that have been somebody's personal project, that has not been transparent, those are not factual.
Well, all right, I 100% disagree with you, and I'm going to explain why. You talked a lot about the process and how to be transparent, which I get, and I see that there's the right way to do things and the wrong way, and I get that everything from the start has been trying to be transparent. Where we are today is nowhere near where this project started when it was originally brought up, for the price, for what you're getting, for the business plan and all of that. What I see now is I see a golf committee that wants no part of it. I see Violi's, the restaurant, wants no part of it, and if they do, they don't want to pay extra for it. I have not met one constituent of any counselor that is for it. So I see all of these people that are against it, and the only ones that I see for it are counselors. There's no business plan. We don't know who's going to run it. We don't know how it's going to be paid for. The way it looks right now, we're probably looking at $2 million. I guarantee it'll get passed through by the council despite what the constituents or anybody else think. And we're going to be in debt for the next 30 years.
Well, I will
so convince me why I'm wrong.
I don't need to convince you.
Okay.
I don't need to convince you. But what I can tell you is that this subject is this dialogue and this proposed project, it's subject to additional discussion. Right. So
you can't vote on something until you have that dialogue.
That is exactly right. And we've been having that dialogue from the beginning, where we have had plenty of opportunity either at the committee level or at the building committee level, at the council level, that everybody have had plenty of opportunity to bring their thoughts and concern. I have seen you on some of these hearings where you have really expressed your thoughts and concerns. You have really brought some very valid points that people like myself and other colleagues and my peers on the council are taking in serious consideration. And when the committee continues to develop their dialogue and the conversation, they continue to look at all the data, all the information, all the planning possibilities during this process, it's going to make a final recommendation for counselors like myself to make a final determination.
So do you feel confident that by the time this goes to a vote to approve or not approve it, do you feel confident that there's going to be enough transparency that the citizens in Meriden are going to know the answers to all of their questions? They're going to know who's going to run it. They're going to know how much they're paying for it. They're going to know how many years until it's paid off. They're going to know all of these questions.
Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you one more thing. I would not support any project or any discussion about any proposed projects in our city, whether it's a banquet hall, whether it's a housing development project, whether it is any business proposal of any kind, unless it's transparent, the dialogue is allowed, the input of our community and our constituents was very important to us, so we can actually gather all the actual information, so all the questions of our constituents and our citizens are answered in every way that we get clarity on some of these questions, that we can get rid of the perception, that we can get rid of the divisiveness and the thoughts that this is being pushed by certain people in particular. It is the essence of what the project will represent, which is really what I care about, and how can that project, regardless of who is proposing the project or any counselor whose name is on this resolution or whomever it is on this committee, it is the data from the committee, from the dialogue, from the hearings to the city council that's going to allow me and the conversations that I've been having with my constituents and our citizens to bring enough clarity and enough data and information that we can sit all in this process and make that final determination where people like yourself and people all around the city, citizens, can actually sit back and say, my questions are, I might not agree.
Right.
I might disagree with you. I might disagree with the mission, with the message, but my question has been answered. And it's a lot, rather than looking at the picture and the data and the information, people are mixing some of their own personal feelings about who has proposed the project, who is in the committee, who has been discussing some of the data and information, additional information that is factual, that I'm in the room can actually see that is being fair, that is being traded.
We'll all be able to get to see that data.
And all of the citizens of the city will be able to be able to see the data. I wouldn't want it any other way, Joe.
Well, because you've seen me at the meetings, and we've heard certain counselors talk about market research study, how Meriden needs a banquet hall and everything else. So we tried to do our homework and look for this research. It doesn't exist. It never happened. There was never a research study done to see. So to me, that's a counselor who's lying to the public. All right, it could be word for word, he could turn it one way and we could turn it another way. But again, it's like you said, it's the transparency. We all need to see that data before one person votes for this thing.
And people cannot get stuck into just one particular area of the dialogue or the conversation. They got to look at every aspect of this project, of this proposed project, to make the determination that it's going to be either a benefit to the city or not a benefit to the city. That's where I, as an elected official, are going to, by listening to our constituents, looking at all of the information that is presented to me, that has been fair to constituents that are asking questions, that make sure that all these questions are being answered, that I'm in the room, can actually see this project come to an understanding that is clear, that is fair, and that is transparent. And I believe that the process has done that.
What if you get in a situation, and I asked some of the counselors that were going for election this year, what if you get to a situation where you get to see all the data, everything's transparent, you really, to you personally, this looks like a great deal. You could see the benefits for Meriden, okay? What if every single one of your constituents says, we don't want it? So now you have a scale and you have a balance. You have your own personal beliefs and you have your constituents. Which way do you go?
And it's great that you bring that up, because that is really hypothetical.
Right.
And I cannot make a decision today and answer your question based on a hypothetical question. I will listen to my constituents, and I will base my vote and my decision on what is going to be a benefit to both the city and our constituents, and listen and make sure that my constituents and the citizens of this city get the opportunity to not only be exposed to the clarity and the information and the data that is available to all of them as they are as is available to us,
Right.
but also to make sure that they understand that you cannot make a decision based on your bias or because someone in that committee is somebody that you don't like personally,
Right.
or because you believe that because of other proposed projects or in other instances you have had your own disagreements, and this is not political. It cannot be.
Well, it can't be personal.
It could be personal. It has to be looked at in a nonpartisan and bipartisan way, where you have to look at all of the aspects. That every question has been answered. All of the specifics of this dialogue has been discussed. Has been provided. All the questions have been asked. The answers have been answered. And if you have a question that hasn't been answered, just email me, email any of the counselors, email the city manager. We're pretty responsive. We want to make sure that your questions and concerns are heard. But you cannot be opposed or become part of the opposition about a project because you don't like somebody in particular,
Right.
or because what
Right.
somebody said during committee, or because of a particular matter that wasn't really to your total satisfaction,
Right.
was not completely there. You have to allow the process to make the completion of everything, which I assure you that by the time we get there, it's going to be clear.
Right. And
All right. Well, I have a
I've-
simple
Go ahead.
question. Simple question. Who said that Meriden needs a banquet hall?
Who said it?
Yeah. Who
Brian
got up
Daniels.
one day?
Brian Daniels brought it up at the council meeting.
So
and
Brian
he's kinda-
Daniels proposed the banquet hall.
Well, there are other members of the community based on what has been proposed, and that's why a resolution is crafted.
Yeah, I just
so
wanted
we
to
can bring
understand-
so we can bring it to discussions, and we have an open and transparent setting where those thoughts can come to a little more. Give it a little more thought and color and,
Right,
and
but
significance. So the fact that somebody brought it up,
Who originated the idea?
Who originated the idea?
Well, this is going back years.
It's a matter of
But-
years
but
ago.
still a valid
other,
question.
a number of other people have been part of the discussions on and off. So,
But somebody had to originate the idea.
so who historically have really
Right.
that I can actually name?
A golfer.
It could be anybody, but I know for a fact that during my years on the council, there have been on and off conversations
Right.
about a possible banquet hall and where and how will that be. And now that we have had the conversation, it's not a matter of who
Right.
brought it up.
Well,
it's
it is.
It's a matter of what and how we can develop a strong and healthy enough conversation to determine whether this is going to be beneficial to both the city and
Right.
and
But I think
and
it's
our
important to
constituent.
find out who brought out the idea and if there's a market study to
Well,
support
I
that
don't-
idea.
yeah, but I
right?
don't think it matters
I
who-
can bring up, hey, why don't we build a helipad on a golf course?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's going to go to discussion.
Oh, that's a
and be-
good idea, Meatball.
Right.
A helipad at the golf course.
But nobody's going to discuss it because it's, a crazy idea. So I want to know who brought out the idea and who
so-
but I don't-
took
I don't
and
think
ran
it
with
matters.
it.
So let me answer that.
Sure.
So it's not a matter of whether your idea is a crazy idea or it doesn't
But-
have
but that's-
it doesn't have any value.
Right.
It's about an idea that it has significance. I, as an elected official, would like to hear it out.
So we're building
I
a
would,
helipad.
I would like to pay closer attention to what you have to say because every opinion matters to me.
Mark it
Right.
down. He wants a heliport at the golf course. I would like one on the roof of the ballroom.
That's two.
I think
Maybe we can buy it in bulk.
that would be all right. I don't want to. I want to get right to the point of the topic: immigration. You work with a number of different immigration groups, and recently charges were brought against you for your MMA fighting skills and your ninjalito karate chop against local marshals at the courthouse. And the charges were ultimately dropped. Now, you've been in contact with me over the course of the last year, and we read on social media. I think in general in the United States, you're guilty until proven innocent in the society's thoughts. So immediately, as soon as you were arrested, you were guilty in the local community's eyes. And then you have your supporters saying, what's wrong with these people? Like, here you have a local city councilor standing up for local immigration at your local courthouse, and you got arrested for standing up for somebody else and for what you believe in. How could somebody come across as negative towards that? And they say, well, he shouldn't have been as a city councilor if you plan on being out and protesting. And I'm thinking that's exactly who you should be. People voted you in because of who you are and what you stand for. And here you are standing up for what you believe in. So then you've got the other side. I'm trying to get most of it across here. You've got the other side that says, okay, well, he's standing up for somebody who got arrested for drunk driving. And they're not looking at you weren't there advocating somebody shouldn't be arrested for drunk driving. You were there advocating that ICE shouldn't be in our local courthouse. You go to court because you get caught doing something wrong, whether it's intentional or not. You try and do the right thing and go to the courthouse. You don't want to have to worry about being arrested after the courthouse just released you. And that's exactly what happened. So talk to us a little bit about why you stand up for immigrants' rights and why you think that's important as a counselor to do that.
Listen, as an elected official in my city, in this beautiful city.
Which one's that?
Meriden. Definitely Meriden.
Good job, Meatball.
I have been involved in many initiatives, whether it is economic development, whether it is economic growth, business opportunity for our local business in our city, which is, or whether it is housing, public safety, education. These are some of the many initiatives that we have been a part of, and immigration is one of them. You know, and in 1892 and all the way to 1954, over 12 million immigrants entered the United States through the portal of Ellis Island, which is a famous conversation for most folks in my parents' generation that enter into a small island called New York Harbor. Now, Ellis Island is located in the upper bay just off the New Jersey coast within the shadow of the Statue of Liberty. Think about the million-dollar question back in 1892 and 1954. Can anybody, either whether it was through legislation at the local, state, or federal level, can right now tell me what was the piece of legislation that allow any kind of definitive search or specific protection to those immigrants back in
I'm going to throw that to Meatball because he's smarter than I
in
am.
1892 or 1954.
Naturalization Act.
Was that right? Was he right?
That is correct.
Wow. Excellent.
That is correct.
Yeah. Good job.
But now these are all the mechanisms that were absent from the Naturalization Act, where there is no real screening.
Right.
People were not demonized. People were not criminalized. And we're talking about, 12 million immigrants that have changed the course of our economic opportunity, economic growth, and culture throughout the history of this country. So when we talk about immigrants that have been part of the essence and the fabric of our community and our cities all throughout this country, and the effort to demonize and criminalize members of our community and to intentionally attack our freedom and our democracy, that is concerning, and it's not only concerning, it is disturbing. So
I think what thanks to Trump and our society nowadays, you have to go all the way back to the beginning. And in a lot of the right side society wise, if you're here illegal, you don't deserve any rights. You're here illegally. And they don't understand, okay, you've got the dreamers. What about the people that are, let's say you're 50 years old, okay? You were brought to America, to the United States, by your parents when you were 7. Okay, that's not your fault. You didn't choose to come here. You were 7 years old. This is the only life you've known here is the United States. You have no family back in Mexico. And if you listen to the right, they say, well, no, you got to go back to your home country and come here the right way. Well, this is their country, regardless of whether it says it on a piece of paper. And I think all of your arguments always go back to legal or illegal. And in the right side of things, they look at it as, hey, you're here illegally. Doesn't matter what happens to you after that. You're wrong, and this is right.
And the right, and the right of the matter is that we have an immigration system that is broken. It's been broken for years.
Extremely.
But nevertheless, it has been intentional to embrace possibilities of a particular part of members of our population rather than another part of our population.
Right.
And that is intentional. Black and brown people in our community have been subject to discriminatory behavior and cultures that have been a constant attack through our judicial process, and cultures in many ways that have allowed discriminatory behavior. And whether you own a business, whether you own your home, and whether you're a member of our community. So going fast forwarding based on what transpired December 13, when this family was in court. And most people say, well, Councilor Castro behavior is unbecoming of an elected official. The answer to that is, what did I do and in which way I behave that have put between question mark the way in which an elected official should behave or act to benefit members of our community, everyone in our community.
Well, describe the situation so people understand. Some people might not be familiar with it. They went to court.
So Elias went to court because of DUI, and that was his violation.
Right.
The due process that he was entitled to make the determination that he was to be released to probation. What transpired after that is that judicial marshals within the court system decided to detain this man against his constitutional rights.
But people say, I don't want to cut you off because I want you to continue, but people say because he's not here legally, he doesn't get those constitutional rights.
He does, because the law in the Constitution protects people that are here illegal or legal or illegally.
So that's not even a question.
It's not even a question.
Continue.
All right. So your immigration status has nothing to do with due process.
Right.
And due process is going to make that determination. The problem in our courthouses and in many of the areas of our judicial process is that judicial marshals have gone not only rogue, but have taken upon themselves to make decisions and gone above and beyond their call of duty as public safety officers that are there and hired to provide public safety to employees of the court and people who come to court for whatever reason.
Right. They have nothing to do with immigration or ICE.
So here are judicial marshals that have make a determination after a court process make their own determination that they have decided to challenge the process of the court and the determination, the decision rendered by a judge to hold this man in their custody to help extradite this man into the hands of ICE. That's what really happened.
And they're getting their orders from the U.S. Marshals in Hartford. Is that correct or no?
No, they're getting...
Or they're doing this on their own?
Central office.
Their central office in Hartford have made determinations and have made blanket statements that they are entitled to make these determinations. Now, you got to keep in mind that judicial marshals are subject to state legislation. Right. They're under the state attorney's office, but the state attorney's office is subject to the Attorney General's office.
Right.
And knowing that these cultures have been going on in our courthouses where judicial marshals that are only public safety officers are making determinations outside their scope of responsibility and violating people's constitutional rights. And every given day you go to a courtroom where a case is being litigated or being argued or talked about between in front of the judge is presiding over a case between the DA and the public defender. In any case, whether it's a traffic violation or you went through a stop sign or a traffic ticket or any sort of infraction that you have committed, these marshals are in that room, and every given moment they can actually call any of their peers to replace them while they're standing there, and they can literally walk out of that courtroom and call immigration agents to share information that has been vented and litigated in a court of law that should be contained in that room. They have access to your docket number, they have access to your case, to the content of your case, to the specifics of who you are, where you live, and this is the information that judicial marshals have been providing to immigration agents.
And that's none of their business. They're there for safety. They don't need to know my docket number.
That is correct.
And you would think that it's, everybody who's against these thoughts and thinks that they should be there calling immigration, you would think that it would be in your best interest. Let's put a scenario together. Meatball's driving along, and a drunk driver has a fender bender with him, right? And wrecks his car. If the drunk driver was not here legally, wouldn't you, Meatball, want to see that person brought to justice through due process in the court of law, so your insurance company will pay for you to have a new car? Or
as long as I'm made whole, I don't care if that person...
Right, but if the judicial marshals are stepping in and they deport him, where does that leave you? There was no justice in your case.
No justice, no peace.
Right, exactly. So you would think, in society's mind, you would think that they would want due process to happen, and whether it's a punishment or whatnot, get carried out. You don't want somebody just booted out of the country and then there's no resolution.
Liberty and democracy and justice is one of the tenets of our judicial system in this country. And when you have members of our process that are violating due process or ignoring due process or creating their own rules and regulations inside our judicial system, is not only alarming, is disturbing, where you are actually using our judicial process to do racial profiling on members of our community. And knowing that this is a culture that is within, or it's happening in our judicial process, it has been identified by activists and community organizers all throughout the state. Connecticut Shoreline Indivisible, ULA, Unidad Latina en Acción from New Haven, CIDA, which is an organization out of Hartford that is a fearless advocate for immigrant rights, and the bonding process, where the system is so broken and so intentional regarding judicial marshals sharing information with ICE agents out of our judicial system, within our judicial system, out of our courthouses, and cases that are litigated and they were contained inside a courthouse, that they intentionally are looking to harm members of our community in the most discriminatory way by assaulting their liberty and the democracy in which they are entitled to enjoy. That is an issue. So in 2013, we were part of legislating where a coalition statewide gathered around the table and decided to propose legislation in that legislative session of 2013 to propose something called the Trust Act, where protect immigrants in our community from being deported or from agencies, state and local police, from sharing information with ICE agents. And there was a number of loopholes, and it did not include the judicial marshals. So throughout these years, since 2013 until this past legislative session, we've been facing the challenge of judicial marshals taking it upon themselves, hiding behind a uniform in their place of privilege and in place of power, as they have been the reason by massive numbers of deportations out of our courthouses have occurred in our community, and the separation of families have been denying that has been happening. The own agency have denied that had been happening. So
where do we stand now with it? Because I did see on the news you guys were trying to pass law in Hartford. Where does it actually stand
so
right
I'm glad
now?
you asked that. So after my arrest in 2013, December of 2018 rather, I've been part of the conversation with the coalition statewide of all the partners and all the community leaders and activists and legislators that were part of this massive discussion to rehab the Trust Act that was passed in 2013, originally the first in the country to strengthen our possibilities and laws to protect members of our community, like our immigration community. And this just past legislative session, it passed at the Senate in the House, and it was effective October 1st. Now includes judicial marshals.
Yeah.
And they're not to share information or data or names with ICE agents at any point. And
so people don't have to be afraid to go to
Correct.
court and let due process happen.
Correct. And you are entitled to due process if you passed or you have a motor vehicle infraction or you have a ticket or you want to go to court to pay a fine. The court is the holy ground where we all as citizens or non-citizens should be able to go in and feel safe, that the process is just, that we will be rendered a process that we are entitled to due process, and that it's fair and it's following the rule of law. The unfortunate part is that hasn't been happening, knowing that last December when I was arrested, when Elias was subject to marshals in our courthouse here in Meriden to share information with ICE agents. This is not the first time.
Right.
They got caught doing it while the public defender in the hallway outside the courtroom was in a constant back and forth with judicial marshals, pleading with them to let this man go, to release it to the process in which the judge had just rendered a decision, and judicial marshals were not respecting that decision. Now think about it. These are just public safety officers. What kind of encouragement or in power do they have as high-level security guards of our courthouses to make the determination to detain someone based on no law, no agency regulations, and to help extradite that person just because of that person's immigration status into the hands of ICE agents? The answer is none. Now that we have determined, have taken apart what they have done, they have violated the process, their own agency, when there's no specifics and no scope of responsibility aside from what they are being hired to do. Now Elias is in their custody. So the public defender comes out, which is the story that most people probably don't know, and we were waiting to really share our story. I shared the story with News. I shared the story with Fox 61. They were able to really sit down with us, and we were able to really tell our side. The side of the story that is the true side of the story, that we can actually cut through the narrative and the divisiveness and the people salivating with the possibility that, as you call me, Ninjalito, was guilty, that this elected official and the headlines went not just locally and at the statewide, nationally. City Councilor Miguel Castro assaulted
Miguel Angel Castro.
Yes.
You've got an alias.
Yes. So, and assaulted two public safety officers.
Right.
And
You're automatically in society. You're
Right.
guilty because
that's correct.
who would attack a judicial marshal?
Right. And
A
but
ninja would.
Yeah.
right. And the truth is that there's a flaw in the process. We identified what the flaw in the process was.
Right.
We have a public defender in that hallway outside that courtroom pleading with judicial marshals. They refuse to release this man because of due process that he's entitled to. And the only thing this public defender can actually tell us is, I can only tell you when ICE agents arrived. He went back to his office. The minute he comes back out, not even 5 minutes after he have just said that, he said, ICE have just arrived.
Right.
It was like dropping a bucket of cold ice water on these kids.
And how old were the kids?
In this hallway, there was a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old and the wife, who, by the way, just past summer was diagnosed with cancer, breast cancer. The separation that these rogue judicial marshals the cause and the harm and the hardship to members of our community, not just in Meriden, and throughout the state. And is just unacceptable and should not happen. And we have to hold the process accountable and highlight what they did that was against the rule. It was against the actual. They did not follow the rule of law.
Well, I think what the public really needed to see, and I didn't see which. I mean, you had showed me many different angles of video of what happened, and I'm not sure which one you released. But the main thing is what the public didn't realize was there's a judicial marshal. Forget about how he got there. That was bad enough. Here you are at this situation in the parking lot, and I literally saw the judicial marshal grab this 17-year-old kid and throw him to the ground.
That is correct.
And that's when you charged and apparently gave the karate chop that brought him to his knees, correct?
So let's
Between the shoulder blades.
So let's make something very clear. First of all, we were not protesting. There was not a rally against the court. There was not a protest against judicial marshals. We were there to support a family that was being subject to a discriminatory behavior inside our judicial process.
Right. Nobody had signs. Nobody had banners.
That is correct. Nobody was screaming or yelling or kicking or punching like most people were saying and said. So let me get to this part.
Well, actually, it was the marshals that were kicking and screaming and yelling. That's what I saw.
And that is correct. So the kids,
they were in pain.
They run out of the courtroom, the courthouse, and they made their way into the Sally Port. That's when most of us and community organizers and leaders that were there decided to run after the kids.
And the Sally Part, correct me if I'm wrong, only has a no authorized vehicles allowed
That is
sign.
correct.
There's nothing that says no trespassing. There's
Correct.
nothing that's saying, hey, they work for us. There's nothing saying that we can't be in that area.
That is correct.
Okay.
And so we ran inside the Sally Port with the only objective and goal to protect these kids. We did not know what to expect, but we just faced 3 court marshals that were there waiting. And they were not only physically but verbally abusive to these kids. So I'm trying to plead with this judicial marshal and trying to verbally let him know that the person that is in my arms, that I'm trying to really bring back outside the Sally Port, outside into a much safer area, out of their presence, out of their state property. It was only 15 years of age. Mm-hmm. Not far from her was her brother, 17 years of age, and they were both pleading and asking and begging, please don't take my father. I'm a father of 4. My youngest is 17 years old, and all I can think is that 15-year-old girl in my arms yelling and begging and pleading, please don't take my father, while this judicial marshal that's closer to 6 feet tall is being verbally abusive to her and physically separates me from her, puts me on the ground in this full body lock, chokes me a couple times, drill his knees into my back, grabs me again and pulls me back up, and drags me all the way until he actually manages to take me out of the Sally Port while I'm actually pleading and trying to tell him and share with him that she's only 15. What I would have expected is that they would de-escalate the situation where they can intervene and make it civil. There's no kicking, there's nobody yelling, there's nobody aggressive, nobody violent. We were just documenting what's happening and going on so we can continue our voice and our message and our advocacy to highlight the flaw in the process. And they decided to take this to the next level by grabbing the kids, by pushing them, and I have a 22-minute long video, and the first 5 minutes, it is the bulk of what really transpired. When after he pushed me out of the Sally Port, I run back into the Sally Port to see if I can get to the 15-year-old girl who was still in that Sally Port. Right. Perhaps begging and continuing to plead for the freedom of her father. Mm-hmm. And that's when
who was it on the ground? Was it the brother or her?
The brother was on the ground as well, and that's when they looked at me as I came to a complete stop, and they say, "Do you want to get arrested?" You can hear it on the video. "Do you want to get arrested?" I start backing off, and retrieving, and they chase me all the way to the sidewalk and put me down on the ground and arrest me. Now you can hear them saying, and I'm going to point this out. What you will see, and what most people have seen on this video, which we made it public through Fox 61, is when the judicial marshal, who was the sergeant in charge of these marshals and on shift that day, and was asking people and some of the community organizers, stop recording and get off the lid. Stop recording and get off the lid.
What does that mean, the lid?
The lid is the Sally Port area, which
okay.
he's identifying as he is calling the lid, or the area where we were all still trying to really retrieve the kids from the Sally Port. There is a moment where the marshal, Mike Dyson, who continues to be verbally unhinged and unbecoming of a public safety officer, in the way in which he behaved, where he's yelling and he is screaming and he's manhandling this kid that's only 17 years of age, while activists are actually telling him he's just a kid. An activist at some point asked him, "How do you sleep at night?"
Right.
And his answer was, "I sleep easy."
Yeah.
I sleep easy.
As long as he collects a paycheck, he doesn't care.
And the other part of this is that as soon as they chase me and put me on the ground and they arrest me, they're actually verbally saying, "Who do you think you are?" And this is all staged, prepared, because they knew people were recording.
Right.
"Who do you think you are grabbing us? Who do you think you are grabbing us?" I keep stating, "I didn't grab you. I didn't touch you." The other ones are saying other things. I am telling them I did not do such things. I keep asking them, I can't breathe, because their knees are...
Yeah, well, that was the best part, is you're saying you can't breathe.
I can't breathe.
And they give the generic answer that all the police give is, if you could say it, you're breathing.
If you can speak, you can breathe.
But I believe Eric Gardner is dead now, and he was saying it, and he couldn't breathe.
Correct. And the behavior in which they really charge and manage the situation, it is the way in which they have intentionally done things inside the process to intentionally tackle and attack and be discriminatory against members of our community. Now think about this. When they file their police report, and this is the bulk of and the essence of this entire story, is that they charge me with 2 felony charges. And the 2 felony charges is that I assaulted 2 public safety officers. Now think about that. I assaulted 2 public safety officers.
And you started a riot, I believe, too, right? Or inciting of a riot, or that's like they give that to everybody. It's your first felony.
The felony to assault 2 public safety officers carry about 10 years in prison. And the state's threatening law carries up to 5 years in prison for a felony offense, up to a year in jail for a misdemeanor offense. Now think about that. On the assault charges, that's what the law says. On the riot charges, the law reads that riot in the first degree, when 3 or more persons assemble, disturb the public peace by intentionally act or threat or unlawful force or violence to persons or property, and death results, and one of the persons is armed with a dangerous weapon, that person is guilty of a riot in the first degree and may be sentenced to imprisonment. Listen to this. For not more than 20 years, or to payment of a fine, or not more than $35,000, or both.
Well, your hands are dangerous weapons, and I've seen you use your karate chop.
So when they charge, is because they charge me with these felonies. They are piecing together their Frankenstein and their story to intentionally cause harm and hardship, as they have done it to other people, members of our community, through this judicial process.
But because of this situation in this case, you have changed the law in Connecticut that this can't happen again.
That is correct. And not only that, but when you look at the evidence and when they said that I hit him so hard that I hit him up, and I read this report. I read this report 263 times. I seen the video 324 times when they said that I hit him so hard on the right upper shoulder next to his neck, as in if I knew where to hit, and I spun him 180 degrees at the same time.
Good job.
That I assaulted his partner next to him within a feet or two from him with my elbow when I struck him on his chest. And this is all within seconds.
Right.
And they claim that we were 20 to 30 people. They were spitting, that we were kicking, that we were pushing, that we were calling them names and pigs. When you see the video that we released to Fox 61, none of that happened or took place.
And not to mention, you have multiple people with multiple different angles and multiple videos, and
Correct.
none of them
Correct.
showed anything that they said was
So
happening.
here is a case of three of us that were arrested that day, including me, and they wanted to make an example out of me because they intentionally wanted to cause harm and hardship, use the intimidation of the process to make sure if I had an opportunity to plead for lesser charges, so I can actually allow the system and to continue to assault their own process and members of our community. We knew what the evidence was.
Right.
We knew that if we went to trial, they were going to go on the stand and they were going to perjure themselves. So this is what happened. During the course of 11 months, the agency forced the sergeant to resign from the agency, number one. Number two, forced the second marshal to quit the agency. Now they have no star witnesses, and they do not want to come and provide or support the story and the statement that they legally provided to a law enforcement officer.
But they get their pensions, right?
So here it is, a flaw in the process. They're still fighting to hide the flaw in the process because they've been intentionally abusing their power, their places of privilege, and they're intentionally discriminating against members of our community. We prove that this flaw in the process is real, it's clear. The process made the determination, and the statement of the DA the day that the charges were dropped says that he specifically and in detail looked at the evidence and the statement of the marshals, and it does not match. Therefore, he proposed that the charges were dropped, and the marshal that remains employed by the marshal's agency came to the court to support the dismissal and the drop of the charges because it's now a matter of self-preservation, knowing that they have no case. And this is what transpired. But this is not about me, Joe, and Meatball. This is about the flaw in the process, the opportunity that we have now to have an open conversation in an open setting, in a public setting where we can highlight the flaw in the process, identify how we fix it. We continue to protect not just members of our community and immigrants, minorities, black and brown people, the injustice that is happening to members of our community every day in many ways. The social injustice that is taking place in a way that is harming members of our community, so we can craft legislation, that we can draft legislation, that we can pass legislation in a bipartisan way, because it's our fiduciary responsibility, whether you're a Republican or whether you are a Democrat or whether you're an affiliate or you're an independent, to protect members of our community. We are all part of one family, the human race. And when you discriminate against one, you discriminate against all of us. If Ellis Island never demonize and criminalize against the Italians and the many immigrants that made it through that port of entry. And 12 million were part of this country's history. 11 million immigrants in this country that continue to be part of the fabric of this country, local cities, Board of Educations, local elected officials, state elected and federal elected officials, of our history, of our trajectory, of the culture and diversity that we need to defend every single day. And as long as I'm an elected official, for those who have said that my behavior is not becoming of an elected official, this is what I stand for.
I think that's
every
exactly,
elected official
yeah,
should stand for.
I think that's exactly what an official should do. Don't you think, Meatball? I mean, it's better than somebody that just sits in the city hall and votes yes and votes no, and you never see. You see Miguel Castro.
Yes, I do.
And I would like to see your karate chop if I can.
Can you teach us afterwards?
Maybe on Meatball.
Turn around really fast, 180, and a chop to the left clavicle.
What? The clavicle. The clavicle. Well, thank you very much for coming in and hopefully clearing things up. And hopefully the society will see what you stand for and what you're doing and appreciate you a little bit more than what some of them do now.
No, and it's going to hate.
No, and Joe, I wanted to really thank you and Meatball and your show and this podcast for giving me the opportunity to come in and have this dialogue and this conversation about a number of issues that is nothing new in our community.
Well, thank you very much for coming, and we will definitely see lots more of you over the course of the next 2 years until you run again, and who knows, maybe state senator one day. I think you have a shot.
A mayor.
A mayor. All right, a couple things to remind everybody. Thank you again, Miguel. Our sponsor for this episode, Carmine's de Vega Ristorante and Bar, Miguel and Lewis over in New Haven, right off of the Merritt Parkway, right after you go through the tunnel. Bang a left, and you'll not a left off the Merritt because you got to go right to go left. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
Yeah, sure.
Well, anyway, go check them out. Friday nights, Mr. Don sings his Frank Sinatra there. Check out the Festival of Lights at Hubbard Park. They're on as we speak. This Saturday, Yule Fest, downtown Colony Street will be closed from 2 to 6. Santa comes in on the train. They're going to hit the lights at 4:30. And don't forget, Saturday, December 7th is the 21st annual Christmas in the Village in South Meriden. 1 o'clock to 4:30. Hope everybody has a really good Thanksgiving.
Happy turkey.
Do you eat meatballs on Thanksgiving?
Yeah, meatballs. No. Turkey meatballs.
All right. Check us out, dirtylaundryct@gmail.com. Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye-bye.
That's enough.